welcome to the first episode of the Fostering Financial Victories podcast. So we're excited. This is to kick this off. We've got Ben Newman here joining us. Kind of apropos, you were the driving force of us getting this started a couple years ago.
Well,
so thanks for being here.
Hey, it's awesome to be here, knowing the conversations we had a couple years ago, and to know that we get to kick this off together. It's exciting.
No doubt.
Thank you.
Well, before we get started, what we wanted to kind of set the stage of is what we're going to be talking about today. And really, given that this is a new year, we want to talk through just goal planning. And I know that's your driving force with what you do with your business. So I wanted to give you some time to explain to the group of what it is that you do on a daily basis and kind of how you got here. I will say that from the Foster Victor standpoint, so our team, we benefit greatly from you coming into town every year to challenge us to think bigger. And it gets us out of our comfort zone every single time that you're here. So that's something that we always look forward to. Everybody's a little bit apprehensive because they know they're going to get challenged.
You're going to scare everybody before you even start.
That's okay. That's all right. So I'll give you a couple minutes. Go ahead and give everybody a background of what you do and kind of what you do on a daily basis.
Well, I think the first thing is the opportunity to work with great people that I get to learn from every single day as well. And, I come from the school of thought that we all need coaches, right? And so I grew up playing sports, so I always had a coach. And what I think about when I look back on those coaching relationships is the coaches made you think, and the coaches challenged you to be the very best that you could be. And I think for all of us, especially when we're approaching a brand new year, it's identifying what does it mean for you to be your best. Even though, yes, I have the opportunity to work at Alabama and K-State football and the Los Angeles Rams and professional and collegiate sports at a very high level, and the Microsofts and companies at a very high level, an unbelievable organization like yours performing at the highest possible level. It really comes down to what does it mean for you to be your best. So think over the last 5 years that we've been doing these planning meetings.
Yeah.
I always say the message doesn't change.
No.
It's every year say my biggest goal is I want you to look in the mirror and be able to say I gave it my very best one day at a time. And that's what I found in business and in sports. That makes the difference. It's being honest with ourselves, evaluating our past behavior, and let's take, for instance, this period of time right now. So as we roll into 2020, I always like asking people a couple questions, and this is something that you can ask yourself. Number one, what are the disciplines and behaviors that worked well for me that I'm bringing with me into 2020? And what are some of those disciplines and behaviors that I want to leave in 2019? And sometimes I think it's just that honest evaluation of our behaviors that helps us determine, okay, what does it mean for me to give my best every day? Because that's how winning is done, is stacking those wins day after day after day after day on top of each other.
Would you say that that's the biggest separator between those who are just the ultimate performers at every level of whether it be business or sports? Do you think that's the biggest separator, that they do those things, or is it something else?
So I'd say there's two things. Number one, if you were to come to an Alabama football practice with me, we consistently hear Coach Saban remind us that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Sure.
So if you're going to show up sloppy in one area of your life, you're going to show up sloppy in other areas of your life, right? So it's choosing to be disciplined, choosing to understand what are the behaviors that are going to cause me to get the result that I want, and then not focusing on the result, but actually focusing on what that behavior is and the consistency of driving that behavior on a daily basis. And then the second thing that I found the highest performers do is they're not seduced by success, right? So the highest performers, once they get the result, they don't say, hey, look how great I'm doing, right? I'm going to take a month off. I'm going to take 2 months off. They say, wow, it feels unbelievable to know that I've given my best. I want to repeat it. I want to believe in myself more. I want to tap into more potential. I maybe want to increase my actions to see what I'm really capable of now. And then when I get a result with those new behaviors, I will not be seduced by success. I'm going to keep pushing to find out what it really means for me to perform at my highest level.
So never really being satisfied is kind of the thought there.
It's not, I think it's enjoying the success that you have, but not being seduced by the success. So yes, it's not saying I'm satisfied, I'm done, I'm content, I'm done. I believe that we're never a finished product. The current book that I'm reading is Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. And he encourages you to shift your thinking from finite, hey, here's 1 year, I know when the year starts, I know when the year ends. Or, if it's a game, I know when the game starts, I know when the game ends. It's 60 minutes, there's 2 teams, one wins, and that's it. It's the infinite of what do you want your legacy to be? what do these behaviors mean to the long-term impact you want to have on the people's lives that you touch every day? Not just looking at this one victory, this one sale. It's more of that long-term impact.
Got it. Okay. So that makes total sense to me. I know we've heard that a lot from you. I think when you bring up goal setting, so you typically get one of two responses, right?
Yep.
So the one person says, yeah, I love setting new goals, the whole resolution thing at this time of year. And then 2 weeks later, they're kind of done.
Yep.
So the other side of the equation, though, is people that set goals and truly stay after them, right? So I've seen this personally from having you in the office and speaking to our team, seeing the impact that the goal setting has, challenging people to think really big. And really big meaning get uncomfortable. Why do you think people shy away from goal setting?
Well, number one, I think it's easier to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
It's easier to just live in our emotion. And, you've heard me say so many times, standard over feelings, right? Don't allow your feelings to dictate how you show up. Choose to identify the standard. You guys are going to keep hearing me say the same stuff over and over again. Choose to identify and understand the standard of what it looks like for you to perform at your highest level. So allowing your feelings to dictate how you show up would mean, well, here's what I did last year, so I'm just going to add 5% to that because that might be easy for me. Okay. That's allowing your feelings to dictate how you show up. I remember when I was here with all of you 2 years ago, right back at the beginning of 2018. You guys actually challenged me, which we could talk about that too, but in the midst of me challenging you, and I always believe in iron sharpens iron relationships, but I remember where the goals that you had all set for yourselves, when you announced it to me, I kind of felt like you were protecting yourself. And I remember asking you a question, and the question I asked actually added 25% to the number.
I remember that.
And I said, this number is so close to this one. I said, what are the terrible, awful, horrible things that are going to happen if you just go for the bigger number?
Yeah.
And that's what I would encourage you to do is have you with your goals for 2020. And nobody knows this, right? I want this to feel like one-on-one coaching. Have you protected yourself with your goals? Or have you actually done something that's going to push you to find out what it means to be your best? And all I did was ask a question.
Yeah.
And you all responded and said, well, there's really nothing bad that happens if we go for this bigger number. And then you guys actually made the goal even bigger than what I'd encourage you to do.
Yeah.
And then you all went and actually executed, did an amazing job of serving your clients, and you completed your year 50% higher than what the original goal was.
Right.
Because after we identified the goal, every individual in the group identified the behavior that was going to give them the highest probability of achieving their part of that goal.
That's right.
And that's what I would say for everybody. We all know what we need to do, but it's not protecting yourself, identifying that goal, push, stretch yourself, identify the behavior, and then show up and do it every day.
So I think that's great feedback. One question I would ask is for people that are not in a business setting goals like this, like we were, just the individual person saying, what do I want to do this year? How many goals should they be looking to try to accomplish? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is there a number? Is there a right number? Is there a wrong number? Can it be too many?
I love that question. I always encourage people stay in your lane.
Okay.
Right? So the number of goals that I set for myself might be tremendously overwhelming for somebody else, right? So it's not somebody saying, okay, Ben's got 20 goals. And trust me, I don't hit all my goals every single year. I push, I do the very best that I can. You fall short on some, and sometimes you pull them into the next year, right? And you say, okay, what do I need to do differently to actually hit it this year? But I think for some of us, it might be just keeping it simple, right? It might be, personally, I want to be more present and focused at home. I want to run a half marathon, or I want to run a marathon, and my goodness, finally I want to stop making excuses and get on point with my nutrition.
Yeah.
So it might be just 2 or 3 things, right? And then they may say professionally, I feel like I didn't give it my best last year. So I want to identify what that looks like, and here's the goal that I'm going for, and I'm just going to try to win the day one day at a time. And then I always believe in having something that's service-based every single day. Have some goals that are service-based. Have some goals that are all about you giving some of your natural talents or some of your love and your passions to other people so that they can improve. So, some people may have 20 goals. Somebody might have 3 goals.
Yeah.
Might be 1 service, 1 personal, 1 professional. And I think if you attack those every single day, everybody has to define what does it mean for you to have a great year. It can't be, hey, Eric, I want to have the year that you're going to have. No, I want Eric to have his year. I want to have my year, and we go attack one day at a time.
I got it. So when you start talking to people on a daily basis, and we see this a lot with our client base, they come in not really knowing what the priority needs to be, and helping them dive into trying to make, all right, let's take these 2 or 3 pieces of a goal and break them down to where, like what you're saying, that day-to-day process of just make it bite-sized. I think that when you start seeing where people set all these goals and then they end up at the end of the year and they really didn't attack any of them,
Yep.
do you think it's because they're thinking too broadly and not diving in, like a rifle approach? Or what do you think causes people to get their eye off the ball as they go throughout the year?
Well, I think sometimes it's that seduction of success piece, right? So you have a really great month, and in our minds, we start to allow the feelings to dictate how we show, wow, if I have that month every single month, I'm going to exceed my goals. So then sometimes we subconsciously pull away from doing what we need to do. Or you have a challenging month, and you allow the month that was challenging to calculate itself over, well, gosh, if I have 10 of those months, I'm never going to hit my goal. So then in the third month of the year, we give up. Yeah. I always encourage people, stay in the ring one round at a time. A month is 12 months, just like a prize fight is 12 rounds. Just take it one round at a time, take it one day at a time, which might be just stay in there and keep throwing punches.
Right.
So whether things are going great or they're going bad. Has there ever been a championship fight, except for maybe Floyd Mayweather, because that guy had the greatest defense ever. But most fighters, when they step into the ring, you're going to get hit.
Yeah.
But it's what you do once you get hit that determines the story that you write.
Yeah. What happens when you get punched in the mouth, right?
That's it. Then the real plan goes into place.
Yeah, so at the end of the year, let's say you get to the point where you're in November and you realize you didn't hit your goals, but you're looking at, all right, what do I do for next year? Which I'm sure a lot of people that are kind of going through this right now. They're looking at what happened in 2019, trying to figure out how to make it better in 2020. How do you reassess if you just really just totally screwed it up and missed it?
Yeah. Well, I have always been a big believer in never changing your goals.
Really?
Okay? Yeah.
Okay.
So here's one thing for everybody. When you talk about not protecting yourself, it is okay to fall short. I think back to 2004, I had set a goal for myself when I was actually a financial advisor.
Right.
So a lot of people don't know that I was an advisor for over 10 years. And I remember I set a goal in 2004 and I fell short my first year. I fell short my second year. I fell short my third year. See, I'm an inspirational, motivational guy, right?
I like it.
And then it took me 4 years to hit this one big goal that I had. But I never changed the goal.
Right.
And there were so many times where I remember having conversations with leaders or people in the office, and they said, why don't you just change your goals, or why don't you lower it? Or the individuals who halfway through the year, they said, well, my goal was to sell $1 worth of product, but I'm really only on track for 50 cents, so I'm going to change my goal to 50 cents. Well, that's not very gratifying. And how do you even celebrate when you change your goal to half of what it was? You didn't hit your goal.
Yeah.
So I come from the school of thought, I would rather that we fall massively short, or maybe you hit 50%, and be honest with yourself. So for some of you who maybe fell short of what you wanted to achieve last year, you don't necessarily have to change the goal. Just be honest with yourself and say, what could I do differently? Right? What do I need to change in my behaviors? What caused me to fall short? Keep your goal the same, and if it takes you 2 or 3 or 4 years to hit it, that's a heck of a lot better than protecting yourself, lowering your goals, and telling yourself that you hit something that you actually didn't hit.
Yeah, so what are the most common things that we see, like what you're saying right now, is people that go through the planning of their finances, or whether it be fitness or money related, whatever it is, I feel like they get right to the point where they're about to achieve the goal and then they just stop. Do you see that a lot? I'm sure you've seen that a lot in your past with the people that you've dealt with, where they don't stop. They just keep pushing. And it's that one day at a time deal is what I'm hearing from you.
Absolutely. And I think it's also understanding that you don't have to necessarily achieve the long-term goal in year one.
Yeah.
Right? I think back, it's an incredible job that you all do as a firm. And it's one thing that I believed when I was doing planning was, if you're starting with somebody with new disciplines to save, or the new disciplines to save are at a much higher level in terms of percentage of income than it ever was, it's okay to build into those disciplines to save. Because otherwise it's going to be overwhelming. All of a sudden we print out the analysis that says, I need to save 25% of my income to get on track. That might be so overwhelming. For some people, they just don't even start.
Sure.
As opposed to what I think Foster Victor does an incredible job of is encouraging people to say, let's start with some percentage of that 25, and let's build that discipline there, and then we're just going to continue working till we get to that 25. And if it takes us 2 to 3 years to get there, it's far better to meet that 25% 3 years from now and then have that discipline for the next 1 decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, than to just never start at all. And that's the same with running a marathon.
Sure.
If you want to run a marathon and you've never run a half marathon, then maybe start with a 5K.
Right.
And then run a couple 5Ks,
Yeah.
then run a half marathon, then work your way up to the marathon. But we don't have to achieve that big goal right away. Sometimes we can build into it because the 5K might be a challenge in and of itself.
Sure. Kind of that low trajectory to a distant horizon goal mindset.
Absolutely.
Right, not trying to just jump the mountain right now.
Yeah, because some people, you become so overwhelmed by what I have to do that I end up choosing to do nothing.
Yep. I like it. I like it. Okay. So, Ben, do you remember the first goal that you ever set? Or what's the first one that you can recall?
So what just popped into my mind is I wanted to play varsity basketball as a sophomore. So after my freshman year of high school basketball, and I preface this by saying I was slow, I couldn't jump, I could shoot really well. So by no means was I any sort of a professional basketball player. But that's the goal that went into my mind because that was a big challenge.
Okay.
Because where I played, I ended up, by the time I was a senior, we had 3 guys that went Division I. So I was just the heart and fire of the team, occasionally shooting a couple 3-pointers. But I remember making it as a sophomore. That was a big goal. That'd be something that would be really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
And I think it was that summer after that freshman year where I set that big goal. And then I had to go find out from the coach, like, what do I need to do? Well, you're probably never going to be able to jump as high as some of these other guys, but go get yourself a pair of strength shoes. Right, so I remember, I don't know if anybody remembers.
Those.
Oh yeah, they had the strength shoes, they had the little platforms and you're walking around like this. And so even though I still can't jump to this day, and it didn't help me that much, maybe it increased me by this much, I remember those sprints in the front of my house wearing those strength shoes.
Okay.
I remember the beat up old basketball hoop. I'd go up this hill in the back of my house, and I remember having to rebound for myself, right? And I'd shoot 100 or 200 or 300, sometimes 500 free throws to be the best free throw shooter that I could be. So now I articulate it and I coach to it. I maybe didn't realize it then, but looking back on it, I was so thankful I had those coaches who said, here are some things that would work. But then I think for all of us, you have to choose the behavior.
Yeah.
And even though I made the basketball team, it was the varsity team as a sophomore, I didn't get as much playing time as I wanted, right? Yet I continued to fight, and by the time I was a senior, right, some things were a little bit better for me on the court, but at the end of the day, it was what can I do to be the best for the team? And it was that occasional 3-pointer. It was firing guys up in the locker room, and it was being a little bit of heart and soul on that court. And so I think for all of us, it's if you don't always get what you want, you got to keep fighting. Celebrate, right, some of those small victories, but don't be seduced by that success, and then just keep hammering those disciplines. Because it really wasn't until my senior year that I was able to start. I was a captain of the team, and I was able to do some of those things that just timing wasn't right for me as a sophomore, but I never gave up.
Right, but it started then, right?
It started then.
Started way back then, yeah. So I know you and I both have young kids, and I know my daughter who's 10 years old, she's kind of starting to get into that competitive mindset. And I know a lot of folks out here have kids as well that are listening that are trying to cultivate a goal-oriented person.
Yep.
Any ideas on what's a great way of doing that?
Yeah. So I for those of you that have had the chance to maybe see locker room videos of me, I tend to get very, very fiery. I will bring the heat, but that's not what I do with my kids.
Yeah.
And so I really strongly encourage parents to understand how old your kids are. Right, so you will never see me yelling and screaming at my son about going and shooting free throws or wearing strength shoes. I ask my son questions.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy, do you think that the amount of time you're practicing is enough right now?
Right.
Right. So no different than I would ask you, hey, Eric, for hitting your goals, have you consistently been showing up? Right. Yeah. So me yelling at my son is not going to get him the results that he wants. It's actually going to make him hate the game.
Right.
So one of the things that's interesting is even though the work that I do at the highest possible level, I mean, I've worked with. The last 4 years, I've had a player on the Super Bowl champion team, right? So I've worked with the highest of the high. I've worked with Olympic athletes. When I go to my son's games, I sit in the stands and I don't say anything.
Yeah.
I don't try to tell the coaches how to coach, even though maybe I know a little bit more than one particular coach. But you know what? I learn watching these coaches, so it's not my place. Sure. And I think for us as parents, support your kids. Give them the avenue to try the different sports that they want to try. Encourage them and love on them to be the best that they can be. And please stay out of the coach's way.
I like it.
Stay out of the coach's way.
Or the teacher.
Or the teacher, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so as we're starting to kind of wrap some things up here, you know, if there are 1 or 2 takeaways for somebody who's looking to set their goals now, what's 1 or 2 nuggets that you would give them to say, just take these two pieces of information and just run with it and see where it takes you?
Well, so let me share something.
Sure.
My fire and my passion, as you know, but everybody listening doesn't know, comes from losing my mom 11 days before my 8th birthday. And losing my mom and watching my mom have a journal where she wrote, beat the statistics, beat the odds, live with a disease that is chronic and fatal, believe in yourself, combat anything, purpose in life. Even though my mother passed 11 days before my 8th birthday, my mother is the one who taught me what it means to live one day at a time and to embrace every day. My mom came to the dinner table with an IV stand every single night, walking down the hallway, 24-hour nursing care in the back of the house, asking me how my day was at school every single night. And you've heard the story.
Oh, yeah.
And so for me, I always encourage people, don't protect yourself and shift perspective when the time gets tough.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one that has a story. I know that's tough on the ears and maybe not what you expected, but we all have a story of challenge and pain we've been through. So when times get tough, shift back to the perspective. You know, for me, I think to myself, you really better come at me with something really serious. Me not starting as a sophomore pales in comparison to, as hard as this is to hear, watching your mother die before your eyes.
Yeah.
Me losing a contract or not getting picked for a speaking engagement, really not a big deal.
Right.
I watched my mother die before my eyes. Yeah. And so number one, I think we have to learn to reframe and to shift our perspective when times get tough. But number two is stay connected to your burn. You know, we have a podcast called The Burn. And one of the things that short little episodes, 8-10 minutes, right, with athletes and business professionals about the importance of staying connected to what drives you. Right? Eric being the best he can be is not you connecting to my burn.
Right.
It's Eric on a daily basis waking up and saying, why am I going to fight to be my best today? Is it those 4 kids that I have at home? Is it my wife? What is that purpose? Yeah. And far too often I commonly find, and this is what I would encourage everybody to do, is that individuals are not connecting to what drives them consistently enough. So if there's one thing I could share from this podcast, I just wonder for you, what happens if you show up every single day in 2020 and one of the first things that you do is you connect to your burn? Because I believe it's that internal burn, that fire, that lights your why and your purpose on fire, and that is what drives our action. If you just wake up and say, I'm going to work hard, it's probably not enough. But staying connected to that burn or that internal driver, it's the difference.
I like it. Okay. So shift the question a little bit. So we got a couple questions we're going to ask you. I don't think you've seen these yet, so This is going to be off the hook.
I'm always ready.
All right. So given that we are a financial planning firm, what is the financial mistake you learned the hard way?
Not saving enough money early enough. I think back to being 23 years old, right? It's the first time I really had a disciplined financial product, and I put away $112 a month. It was the only place that I've put $112 a month every single day since I was 23 years old. I wish I would have put away $250 or $300, right? And I also, it's the regret of, I always worked as a kid.
Okay.
So my first job, I was 13 years old, making $3.25 selling hot dogs at the Jewish Community Center snack bar. And then I was a busboy. I was a waiter. I was a busboy at Morton's Steakhouse, right? High-end steakhouse.
Yeah.
I'd walk out of there as an 18, 19-year-old kid. I'd have $250 in tips as a busboy some nights. Blew it all. Right? So it's like, until that, at 23, and I still don't feel like I saved enough then. It should have been way more. It took a while to build those disciplines. But I wish I would have learned to save more at a younger age.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
Because they always want to push it off to, well, maybe timing will be better in 6 months. I think to echo what you said earlier, just start.
Just
right?
start.
Just start.
Yeah.
Start somewhere.
But also challenge yourself. I don't think my advisor at the time, it's amazing that she encouraged me to do what I did, but I wish she would have pushed me to do just a little bit more.
But at least you started.
At least I started.
That's right. All right, second question.
Yep.
If you could buy anything, regardless of cost, what would it be?
A plane.
All right.
Yeah. Now, there's a specific reason why. Yes, I do occasionally love traveling privately, and it makes things a lot easier. But the reason why I say a plane is because I'd have so many more nights at home.
That makes sense.
And you speak 70, 80 times, the number of teams that I work with, the sidelines that I'm on weekends. Having access to that private plane all the time would give me more nights at home, and that would be incredible.
Okay. I'm sure your kids would appreciate that for sure.
And sometimes I do get to do that, and it's a big difference, so I'd love to have that all the time for them.
Okay. And the last thing, what is the last 2 things you spent money on? Doesn't matter what it is. The very most recent 2 purchases.
The most recent 2 purchases. So I gave my son the coolest pair of Air Jordans. So they're called the newspapers. And they have like newsprint, like cutouts on these Air Jordans. They're black and red, which I love. For those of you that know
You're a Jordan guy.
At Continued Fight on Instagram, it's all black and red. So they're black and red, and then they have these newspaper cutouts. So I got a pair for my son, and he opens them up in the box, and he's like, "Dad, these are awesome." And he's like, "You should get them." And I'm like, "All right, I'll buy some too."
So you bought 2 pairs.
So I hopped on and I bought a pair. And then the last thing after that was I had the blessing of being with Kansas State football. So we had a great opportunity to embrace their team this year and to flip their mindset with a great coaching staff and a great group of players. So I just came back from their bowl trip and being able to buy some of the things that I wanted to for the kids to remember that was pretty awesome.
And you took your kids with you, right?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they went to the bowl game.
That's a big time.
Yeah, they enjoyed it.
All right, awesome. Well, I know you mentioned it just now, but let everybody know where to find you.
Yeah, so at Continued Fight. That is the very best possible way on Instagram. And it's actually me. It's me posting every single day.
Yeah,
so
he was just doing that right here just a few minutes ago.
So it is me on my story. It is me. So I love staying connected, right? So at Continued Fight, every single day there's messaging. And a lot of times it's inspiration I find from others that I'm just passing along.
Yeah.
And so we really fight hard to build a community where we can grow together and challenge each other. And then bennewman.net is our website.
Okay, so we got at Continued Fight and then bennewman.net.
And if you really want to get challenged, I believe in a mindset called the unrequired.
I was hoping you would go there.
The highest performers, they do the unrequired.
Yes.
And the unrequired is doing the things that other people don't think about, they won't talk about. They're certainly not going to tell others about it, that we choose to make a priority. So theunrequired.com, and you can learn a little bit more about that mindset.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. There's a couple things I wanted to follow up on before we finish out. So we would love to hear some feedback from you all. You can find us on our website. It's at fostervictorwa.com. You can email us from there with any suggestions or questions that you want us to cover on this podcast going forward. And we're also on Instagram at Foster Victor Wealth Advisors as the tag. So you can definitely send us a message there as well. We hope that you would take 1 or 2 pieces away from this discussion. And our accountability check that we're going to do every episode is going to be for this week to go public with one of your goals to somebody. And I'm sure you would agree, typically that makes it real.
Yeah.
Right? So we want you to go public with one of your goals.
Writing it down makes it real.
It does.
Passing it along to somebody else and asking for accountability, that makes it really real.
Yeah, so if you would, just tag us on Instagram with that, on who you went public with, just if you did it. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Love it. Thank you, Aaron.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.